Have you ever been in a race and wondered how often do people actually cheat on these? How often do people take advantage of those out and back sections and loops to just kind of, maybe bend down, tie their shoes, and pop up going in a different direction than they started? Well, today we are continuing the conversation from the last episode with Mr. Brian Davis, and he is going to talk to us about the influence that corral placement has on our race times and the overall race results, as well as what he sees in the data across many races, both Disney and non-Disney, with cheating, and how rampant is it really, and how good are the race organizers at actually identifying when that happens. So it should be a good conversation. Definitely, when we went through it, it was very difficult to trim it down, which is why we broke this episode into two parts. With that, let's get back into it. So, changing topics a little bit, corrals. Always a huge topic of conversation the week before a race, 2 weeks before. I think I saw the first post about it for Princess already. What corral am I in? I don't know. You'll find out when you pick up your bib. But tell me about like what you see in the corrals. It feels like, and everything I've heard, is that not proof of time is basically like just luck of the draw. Does the data show that?
Yeah. And by that, if you look at the data from the standpoint of where was your bib and how fast did you run? If you do that for something like Boston or Chicago or any of these other similar sized races, honestly, those tend to have a very significant progression. The curve looks kind of like a snake. You can see that the fastest runners are in the front and the slowest runners are in the back. And it's more or less a continuous trend along that. Disney, that happens in A, B, and C, where you can see some of this, A is faster than B is faster than C. And then behind there is no actual pace.
It's just an unsorted list of people.
Yes. And there could be a number of reasons for that. One of them is there's a whole lot of people that simply say, I don't have proof of time, but I'm the fastest pace that's not proof of time. And they put in their estimated pace as the front.
I'll be honest, most people I know who don't have proof of time, that's exactly what they do.
Yep.
Regardless of what their pace is.
And I have no idea how Disney could fix that, because if the answer they're getting from the runners is, yes, we're all just a little slower than 2:30, then they have no way of sorting them.
No. And likewise with like the 5K, if everybody is selecting under 7 minutes, then nobody is under 7 minutes.
Well, so I don't have data on the 5K. The 10K has an interesting problem in that if you are just a 10K only bib, there seems to be some sorting. So Corral A 10K only bibs tend to be faster than Corral B or C, etc. But for challenge bibs, they appear to be thrown in there at random. There is no pattern to the paces.
Did you find a change this year with Dopey bibs?
I did not. I haven't done marathon weekend on this yet.
Yeah, so I mean that'll be interesting to look at or hear, because they did apply proof of time to the 5 and 10K for people with Dopey challenge bibs, and we had misinterpreted that as everybody in 5 and 10 needed to provide proof of time, and come to find out, we're like, half of the corral seemed like the type of people that we're used to seeing at the front. And then the other half of the corral was the people that we're used to seeing at the front of a Disney race.
Yeah.
Which is quite a bit different, right? You usually don't see small children at the tape in even a 5K at any race, right? Usually children, wheelchairs, in the back. But, at Disney, we're used to seeing like the kids start at the tape. And that always is a little concerning, seeing, being in the front of A, and then there's like 3 children next to you. It's like, it
you're like, okay,
as a danger
they're next to
situation.
me. I won't hit them. But what about the people that are 2 back that don't know they're there?
That's right. And I mean, Even though it's an untimed 5K, there are a lot of people who race it like a 5K.
Yeah, I will be interested in looking at that again. But traditionally, the 5K I don't have data for, and the 10K that I do is even less sorted than the half or the full. But as a general rule, yeah, the Disney races are terribly unsorted by pace. And I think that's as much, I think it's twofold. First, it's a whole bunch of runners saying, yes, I want the furthest corral forward, so I will do what it takes to get whatever the furthest corral forward is. The other thing is, Disney used to have corrals that went out to like P, and the proof of time went out much further as well. Those were much better sorted, but that also takes a lot more resources to actually verify any of those proof of times.
Yeah, although the proof of time has been creeping slower lately.
Yeah, but it used to be out much further. I mean, when I did the 2013 full, the only race I'd run before that was a 10K, and I did that for a proof of time. That actually at the time could get me a proof of time slot for the marathon. And
Wow.
it was still pitifully slow, but that tells you, how far back those corrals were time based. And it shows in the data. Now it's still a bit of a crapshoot because there's plenty of Corral A runners that have Corral A proof of times and are then stopping for every character photo, which makes them look like slower runners. Yeah, I mean, if you're running a mile and then stopping for 10 minutes, running a mile and stopping for 10 minutes, your pace is different.
And every race is different, right? Like, I used to religiously be like, I am going to 5K and 10K, who cares? Although there have been times, was it the 5K, 10K at Princess 2 years ago? I guess I was like the fourth or fifth to finish, female. And there was one point where I could not see anyone in front of me on the course, and I couldn't see anyone behind me. And I was questioning if I was still on the course. And then
you realize this is a question none of the rest of us actually have, right?
Well, but my point was like there's times where we get to the photographer and they're not ready. So, you can't stop. But the last several years, my philosophy has been skip the first two characters because even for the A fold, everybody stops at the first one. And all of a sudden you've got a line that's 20 minutes long, 30 seconds into into your run. Right. So now I'm like, if there's more than 3 people, I don't stop. But the deeper in you get, the shorter the lines. And this year I was like, you know what? Screw it. I had the hamstring injury. I barely trained for Dopey. I think I had 2 weeks of runs on the lever on a treadmill with an insane amount of weight taken off of me leading up to that race. The only reason why I was comfortable running it is because I had all the residual fitness coming into it from a season of Ironmans. And I think I looked at it, I lost 26 minutes on the marathon to character lines.
It's something that actually I've tried repeatedly to find a way to do with data, but the MAT data doesn't really speak to it. You really need somebody to go out and run and record how long they are in each line to figure out how much that's really slowing down runners.
So there's one way you can't get it with the MAT data, but an individual runner can get a good sense for it. If you're not stopping to go to the bathroom, and it only works if you're not stopping to go to the bathroom. I usually tell people, especially Run Disney folks, to make sure that you turn auto pause off on your watch.
Absolutely.
But when you're done, if you look at the difference between moving time and elapsed time, assuming you started your watch relatively close to when you started and you stopped your watch relatively close, hopefully after you pass the photographers. By the way, the photographers still have you in frame when you're at the finish line. So take 3 steps past the finish line before you stop your watch. Or you're going to have a really lovely picture of you stopping your watch. Ask me how I know this. I had a season of pictures of me stopping my watch, which was right after the season of me where did I tell you there was one season, it's like 4 years ago, every single finish line picture I had that entire season was with some dude's elbow in my face?
No, but I can imagine it very
Because,
easily.
the guys all put their arms up. Well, if there's someone next to you and their face is at eye level with your arm, guess what? Your arm is blocking.
Yeah.
You could see like me up to my neck. It's like, I'm headless. It's okay. I was really mad for like after like the first weekend. And then after that, I'm like, it's just a joke at this point.
Yeah, but it's a good idea to look at that, moving time versus total time. It's really difficult though without that. I've always wondered how many increased passing events is how I think of it,
Mhm.
do photo stops create? And it's significant,
Yeah,
but it's
it has to
very
be.
difficult to actually figure unless you've got sort of an idea of how long those lines are.
Well, and the lines are variable and they change as the race progresses, right? I was surprised to hear how short the lines were for like at the real tail end. And because you know, you read all the time about people are like, oh, I'm going to get that picture even if I get swept. And I'm like, that can't possibly be that many people. And for us in the front, like the lines get really long really fast. They really do. And I think B actually probably has no different congestion than further back because like the back of A ends up in a walk, as it turns out.
Believe me, there's more congestion further back.
I do.
You can take the mat data
Yeah,
and you can actually analyze it to say how many runners are crossing this mat per minute. And that number increases the entire race. So if you're just sitting in a mat and watching, the number of people crossing a mat per minute is a constantly increasing number, almost right up to when the balloon ladies cross the mat.
interesting. I've always been surprised at how few mats Disney races have.
Yeah, a lot of when I ran Chicago this year, which was my first major, there was better than a mat per mile in
I was
sections. It was just a ludicrous number of mats.
I was going to say like a typical major race is going to have one at minimum every K if it's straight, but they're going to have a cheater mat at every turn.
Yeah, and Disney/Track Shack, for whatever reason, has not done that. Now they have started to shift mats. So the mat placement at Disneyland was to catch cheaters, to catch course cutters.
I saw that.
And that also happened at Wine and Dine this last year. I mean, they moved a mat into the middle of Blizzard Beach because that way you can tell who cut Blizzard Beach.
I saw that. I will be honest, like at Wine, I actually really liked the course at Wine and Dine this year. And everyone was like, oh, we have to run Blizzard Beach. I'm like, it was so weird running that course in reverse from what we're used to.
Yeah.
Running down into Blizzard Beach instead of up out of Blizzard Beach. I was like, this is different.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's the same course, just backwards. And, Blizzard Beach at 5:45 in the morning is not so bad.
No, before it starts baking. But yeah, I've
Yeah.
always been surprised that I don't know what it costs to deploy a mat, but it would seem to me that more mats could be afforded.
I mean, we all know that Disney's on the verge of bankruptcy. I mean, they couldn't possibly afford the extra mat.
Well, the biggest thing is I really think it would help them with being able to say where runners are. There's a lot of people that still use, not Find My or something like that, but actually are using Disney and Track Shack to try to locate their friends. And when you can only locate them, on the marathon once every 5 miles, that's a pretty big window.
Yeah, and the apps now, and it's the same app that other race organizers use, it tries to estimate where that person is based on what it knows about that person. But you're right, like in other races, what it knows about that person is changing every 2 miles, every 3 miles, not every 10K,
Well, and,
if that.
and there's the additional problem because people use that to track the balloon ladies.
Yes.
And those apps have no relevancy before the first mat, but they will report when they think you're going to hit the first
Yes.
mat. So I'm still unclear on what populates the initial paces on those, but I can tell you from experience, they are fantasy. They are not in any way real.
I was to say, a fantasy might be an improvement. I don't know. I've used that for watching like where people I care are. It gives enough information that, if they're like seriously late hitting a mat, then something happened. And I think for that, it's good enough for that. Like if someone's like 10 minutes late hitting a mat, or 15 minutes, well, Disney 30 minutes late hitting a mat, something bad happened. But if you want like precision, you're not going to get that from that. Where that same app in like an Ironman or a major, you're going to get updates like every 5 minutes.
Yeah, I would think they would be handy for Disney if they could afford another mat or two to deploy one like half a mile out before Main Street. Because now your runner is about to come onto Main Street, and that's valuable from a spectator standpoint.
It is, but there's a gotcha. The system that updates that isn't always in real time.
No, but it's more in real time a half mile out than it is 5 miles out.
That's true. That's true.
If they get a message saying, "Oh, they're here," even if you're a little bit off, you're still more accurate than trying to catch them based on really outdated data.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried to spectate on Main Street?
No, I'm usually the one running down it. But my husband is a expert at spectating Main Street.
Do you find your husband, or does your husband find you?
So usually he finds me, but sometimes, well, he sees me before I see him. But sometimes I see him because he's making an effort for me to see him. Other times it's because he's wearing an obnoxiously colored shirt.
And that's a very, very good strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things that I've noticed is for the runner, we only have to pay attention for 5 minutes down Main Street. That's it. I know somebody's going to be on Main Street. That's where I'm paying my attention. I'm looking for them. For the spectator with Disney's mat system, they have to be kind of trying to pay attention for 20 minutes because they have no idea where in the stream of several thousand runners theirs is.
Yeah, it's if you're relying on the app, we're mostly Apple. So I sometimes run with Garmin, I sometimes run with Apple, and all of the Apple versus Garmin people. Newsflash, it doesn't matter. Pick one, whatever you like, run it. Unless you're doing like ultra Ironmans, like 24 plus hour events, like pick whatever you like. And they both have the real time, right? Garmin Connect can do it. Apple with Find My does it. So we use Find My. Even if I have my Garmin watch on, I still have my phone with me. And so that's pretty close to real time most of the time until it gets like really congested, right? I'm fortunate enough that I'm not typically running in a really congested field, at least not at that point. But we have had some getting him to Magic Kingdom before I get to Magic Kingdom. So I actually appreciate, so I don't like the new route reversed through. I'm like, I've done Magic Kingdom. I miss running through the toll booth. I miss running through the bus circle and like straight in that way. But the new route makes it easier for spectators to get there before they're runnered.
Yes, it does.
Because with the switch at TTC, he was getting there in the past literally minutes before I would get there. And now he's there like 15 minutes ahead. So it's not like a huge improvement, but it's enough that he's not like, oh shit, did I miss her?
Mm-hmm.
Where like there were a few close calls in the past. And they can see their runner at TTC most of the time on the way out too, right before we get the tour. I'm sorry. I don't mind Blizzard Beach. It doesn't bother me. It's annoying to me only because they put the food and the water in the wrong order. When I see a table coming up, it better have water on it. And if it doesn't, and I didn't just pass a water table, I am going to be angry. And I'm angry every time I see that. And the water is up ahead a half a mile. But the TTC, it's like let's do an out and a back and around and come back and then go back the other way again. And I'm like, you couldn't have come up with something better. Like, give us more time in Animal Kingdom or something, right? Like, you could add an extra half mile in the park. That would be great.
I was actually surprised that was added there because it delays runners.
Yeah.
If you're worried about opening roads on time, I would try to loop as much as possible near the end where,
Right.
that
That's what
way
you
you're
would
advancing
expect.
people off the highways early.
And you remember a couple of years ago, they did that. The route coming out of Blizzard Beach had, went up and then went out on the highway and then came back in, added like an extra mile or a mile and a half before we went in Hollywood Studios. That was the year that it was raining torrentially.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I do remember that. And
Yeah.
I know these are decisions that I also wonder how much you and I have mentioned privately that, Run Disney is not a monolithic organization. There are really a lot of different pulls within it. And the parks are a big one. The parks can say, we need this arrangement for our own personal reasons. It may have nothing to do with running and runners.
So we got married in Magic Kingdom over the summer. And that experience taught us quite a bit about how Disney works. And what we learned the hard way was that park operations trumps everything. Our wedding venue changed after it had already been locked in. We paid our money, told everyone, hey, it's going to be at midnight. It's going to be in World Celebration, Just kidding, because Park Ops decided that instead was going to be the night that they were going to do the switch to the Food and Wine Festival. So we ended up in front of the castle, which I was not unhappy with. But it wasn't the original plan. The original plan was to get for it to be in Epcot. And then that weekend, just kidding. So relating it here, I have no doubt that a very significant portion of the decisions that we all blame Run Disney for are because of things that park operations has going on that Run Disney has no sway over. I've heard through the grapevine that that's why yoga has moved to Monday from Friday, Thursday that normally is at, is because it's easier for park operations.
And I can believe that. I mean, park operations not only impacts the course, it impacts the parking, it impacts the bus schedules. There is no aspect of this that does not depend on park ops. And they've got parks to run. It's one of these things that Disney does such a good job of making it all look seamless. It's easy to forget that there are a bunch of competing, goals and drives that are happening behind the scenes.
Yeah. And, if you ever doubt the impact of that, get on a bus on marathon weekend, and especially one of the buses after the park has opened, but before the marathon is done. And especially if it's one to Magic Kingdom, and go back to the resort and then listen to all of the frustration that park guests who aren't there because of the run are having and experiencing. And online, you hear a lot of people be like, oh, you should have done your research, It's like, they wouldn't have known. Nobody's going to go, oh, hey, is there a Run Disney event this week? Hey, is there a cheerleader event this week? Is there a whatever event? And now people go to Disney's main website. Oh, hey, look, the park opens at this time. Cool. So it does affect.
Yeah. And, it affects the runners. But like you say, most of us as runners tend to think, oh, it's Disney magic, it's pixie dust, it's Disney bubble. Don't worry about it. And it's like, well, life is still going on behind the scenes.
Wait a second. I didn't say it wasn't magic and pixie dust.
We do tend to subscribe to the pixie dust is not a training plan, however.
Yes. In fact, I have a business because pixie dust and wishes is not a plan. Ironically, adrenaline can get you a lot of the way there, but only the first time. It's an interesting phenomenon where the first time you're doing something big, the excitement and the energy might be enough to make up for lack of fitness, but the second time you do it, it won't be.
Try running dead last start.
What was that?
Try running dead last start, because all of a sudden you actually have that adrenaline again. It is a different enough
you made
experience.
A fundamental change.
Yep, you've made a fundamental change.
Yeah, because it's all about, knowledge, right? If you know what to expect, your psyche, your body, it behaves differently. if it's your first time doing something that you're anxious about, your body responds to the anxiety. And it can go a little further, it can go a little faster, it can do things it doesn't want to do. You will know later that it shouldn't have,
But at the time,
but at
yeah,
the time, it's okay. Like if you still can't walk 3 weeks after a marathon, you might wanna do a little bit more training next time. I say that just, but I do see a lot of bad advice out there, like post-marathon of like, "Oh, just don't do anything for the next couple of weeks." It's like, "No, no, no. My athletes are out doing shakeout runs the next day. You should
yeah,
be."
yeah. We usually go into the parks, but even after Chicago, the next day we were out walking around Chicago, and it's like I don't want to sit down. It might seem to somebody who hasn't done it like a good idea, but that's not really.
And that's the point is like, it's not the running, it's the keeping moving. It's like if you're gonna do like a shakeout run, it shouldn't be a hard run. It's like a half hour of like an easy jog. It's keeping the body moving. 'Cause those first few days, what you're trying to do is delay, is to head off DOMs, right? Where if you don't do anything, the next week after that is going to be really rough and kind of suck a lot. So the last question I had for you was Clever on Disney. We talked about this beforehand. What influence does Clever on Disney have on the corrals?
So if you sort the race pace by bib number,
Hmm.
you see what we've talked about before, which is A is truly faster than B, which is truly faster than C, which is truly faster than D, E, F, and all the rest are sort of a mishmash. There is what I call the mouse hole, which is when you plot the data that way, there is a group of runners in Corral B generally that are consistently the same bib grouping, and they are significantly slower than
Hmm.
anything in A or B or C or even back into D.
Have you been able to identify what you think is the Clever on Disney range?
Yes, but it tends to change. And I say I've identified it because if I look at that obvious glitch in the data, I can see what bib number it starts at and what bib number it ends at.
Mm,
Because it's a continuous block that
right.
shows up. There
Yeah,
are bibs in that range that don't appear to start at that place. They might be up at A, they might have dropped back to be with a friend in D. But when you group them by bib range, it shows up very clearly. And it
yeah,
doesn't change by very much. I haven't looked at the start and end bibs on that range because I try to pull them out every race. I want to make sure that I know which ones are which. But it doesn't change a whole lot. It's usually right in the same place in the bib sequence. So yeah, you can get a count of how many of those people are in Club Run Disney.
and the
And I to that
range is
by
at
asking people.
the range is at the bottom of B, the start of B, right?
Yeah, it's generally at the start
Yeah.
of B. That
Yes.
doesn't mean they're all, automatically at the tape in B, but in bib ranges, yes.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I get as a Club Run Disney runner with Proof of Time, I always get that little agita when I get my bib number because it's like instinctually, I see a B bib number, but I know it's probably not. And if it is, I'm going to be spending 2 hours at Runner Relations. But, and now, like, a couple of my friends got platinum this year, and they're like, one is, like, borderline elite, and he's probably only a couple of bibs off of the elite range, and now he's got a Club Run Disney Platinum. He's like, "Wait, I paid extra to have a worse bib number?"
What you can do, and I originally, people got annoyed at dead last start because
Mhm.
they said that by starting out of your place, you're increasing congestion. And I thought about that and I'm like, okay, how could I actually do that? So I figured out how many people starting, let's say in D, which is one of the places I've traditionally been started.
Mhm.
If I start in D, I can figure out how many people I passed during a race. and how many people passed me. In dead last start turns, the people that I passed are my kills. The people that pass me are what we call assassins. I'm on their kill sheet. They had to pass me.
Yeah.
So I can do that calculation and say, by putting me in the race there, how many passing events am I responsible for? Am I generating? And then I can put myself in the far back of the race and do exactly the same calculation. It turns out that by me dropping from D back to the very back, I reduce the number of passing events that I cause. And the reason's pretty simple. All those assassins that needed to pass me before, nobody is my assassin.
Right.
I will run, but nobody is going to pass me because by the time I get up with people that fast, I can't pass them.
I was going to say, it's such a difference in perspective because from the front, I know every single person who was in front of me passed me. And from the
Whereas
back,
from the
every
back,
single
I
person
can look back
behind you, you
is
passed.
somebody I passed. One of the most empowering things about dead last start is usually right about 10 miles on the half, you're on that bridge over the highway. And it used to, at the old course, you actually looked back towards Magic Kingdom. And you'd look back and you would see miles and miles of runners, and you had passed every one of them. That is a tremendous thing to see. And you're right, it's exactly the flip side of what you're seeing in the front. But I could do that calculation for me or for a dead last start runner. And by us dropping back, we reduce the overall congestion and we shift it. And by that, I mean, I personally experience more congestion running at the back, but all of those passing events are something I need to take care of. I'm the one passing from the back. I'm the one responsible for that. I'm the one that has to fight through that. I'm not inconveniencing someone else in that regard.
Taking that logic forward,
Taking that logic forward to
folks that got the advanced placement,
they are doing the opposite. So by taking someone from, say, Corral D with a pace like mine, a Corral D pace, and popping them up into B means they are now adding significantly to the number of assassins that they would have. Many more people need to pass them.
Now, putting it into context, on average, what is the size of that population?
The size of
the Club Run Disney
members?
Yeah. The misplaced bibs.
That's on the order of, okay, I should have looked this up before because I'm going to misspeak off the top of my head. I think that's on the order of a few hundred.
Okay, so a few hundred out of what was the half marathon at Marathon Weekend? Like 18,000 finishers?
Yeah, around that.
So a couple hundred at 18,000, and Wine and Dine, there's about 14,000 finishers. And Princess, I would imagine, be somewhere in the middle. So 200 to 400 bibs, it's a pretty small percentage.
It's a pretty small percentage. What's interesting, though, is if you take an 18-minute miler or a 16-minute miler or a 14-minute miler and put them up in B, that drastically increases the number of people that have to pass them.
Yeah.
And that's a load that's actually going on to other runners, not those runners that have been promoted. So in a sense, they're paying, and the impact of that is going to all the other runners behind them.
Do you think that it's balanced by runners starting behind the corral that they would otherwise be assigned? And I guess thinking about it, if corral D through G these days is unsorted, how much of an impact does it really have?
That's the thing. If you look at the number of passing events a runner experiences during this race, it's insane. A race of 10,000, you are interacting with, meaning either they are passing you or you are passing them. You are interacting with 60 or 70% of the race in some places. By that definition, 10,000, and we're talking 60%, that's 6,000 people. If I have to pass every one of those additional, mouse hole people that were promoted, that might add another 200 passing events to my 6,000.
Yeah.
That's not huge. The impact is actually really significant, but that impact is distributed over a race of 10,000, 15,000, 18,000. So yeah, taking off my statistical hat and putting on my personal one, I don't like that idea. I like the idea of you start a race properly sorted because that is by far the safest for everyone. It is the fairest for everyone. And I also understand why it doesn't happen at Disney. I mean, it's
Yeah.
difficult to happen at Disney. But realistically, that impact is not, you aren't suddenly slowing down the rest of the pack by, even 10 seconds per mile.
Yeah. And I think that was the original accusation was twofold, that it was taking up people, it was taking up spots in that corral, which I think Disney has fixed because the corrals used to be relatively fixed in size for A and B. And this year it seems that like they weren't. A was
And they
much.
expanded proof of time into C as well.
They did, but the size of A at Marathon Weekend was significantly larger than it had been the last 2 years. I mean, just going based on bib numbers, since the last 2 years they had been limited to 500 in A and B, and then C was, I think, twice that size, and then it like doubled again for D and forward, at least according to what Track Shack had shown us. And this year, I was like, there were a lot of people in A. Like it felt crowded. It's one of the crowds, like it usually does not feel crowded until like just minutes before the race when everyone just kind of compresses up towards the start line. I mean, you know the phenomenon, right?
Yeah.
It's like elastic, right? It's like we're about to start, take up every breathable inch in between. Yes, I think, when it first came out, that was the one accusation, and the other is like, oh, they're making it so much more crowded on course. Like in my head, I'm like, I've seen the number of like the racks that they have the bibs on, right? There's only a finite amount of space on those racks. It's not big. Right? And I'm like, there can only be like 300 or 400 tops, people in there. Like in a race this size, it shouldn't have that big of an impact. But the other thing I've noticed is, to your other point, a lot of races are starting to follow a similar trend with like VIP offerings and other things where like there's a local triathlon where it's, and triathlon is self-seated to start with. Let's just throw that out there, right? Like almost everyone, there's no such thing as proof of time unless you're in a world championship and you're lining up in whatever order you line up in. And they'll have signs like, if you're swimming this in under 30 minutes, under 40, 42, whatever. But you can pay to be in the first group of people out into the water. That does actually slow people down. I feel like that's dangerous too, because at least here we're passing on our feet.
Yeah,
not in water.
I've looked at one nice thing you can do with the race data is you can synthesize anything you want. You can treat the race data as these are a bunch of ideal runners. And let's pretend they're not slowing each other down. And then shuffle their order. So you can start a race where everyone starts exactly in their right place. And when you do that, there are no passing events. No one will ever pass anyone else because all the faster runners are ahead of you, all the slower runners are behind you. And you can do the opposite because some people have asked me this. They're like, why don't we start the slow runners first? Because they need the most time.
That's such a bad idea.
Well, it's a bad idea because people look at it from the standpoint of their experience. And a race director has to look at it from the standpoint of what the field will do. And it's remarkable because if you start them reversed, you rapidly, and I mean rapidly, like within a mile or two, hit congestion densities that even theory says you can't move. There's a maximum number of people you can pack per square meter, and you rapidly exceed that to where the entire race would simply be a standing at a standstill, literally.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they had that happen at Disneyland a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
When they had the water tables and
at a turn at a narrow spot.
Yeah.
And you can actually look up, there are professional peer-reviewed papers that run these models that will say, here's the course, here's all the narrowings. If we run races with this distribution of runners, what happens. And there is it's what's called a shock front. If you get up to a certain density of runners, it transitions to a standstill. And that's a serious danger. There have been races that have had to replan that because it showed that a shock front could form on a bridge and the bridge could physically overload. A bunch of runners standing there are more than a bunch of vehicles on the bridge. And you can exceed a bridge rate that way. So it's the same sort of thing with this, where you're like, okay, they've got to worry about everyone. They've got to worry about the entire race and what congestion you hit where. And that is not an easy task.
No, it's not. When I think about the slow runners starting before the fast runners, the thing that pops in my mind first is safety. It's like we started
Absolutely.
the conversation off earlier talking about like children in the front of the 5Ks. It's kind of the same thing. It's like, well, if you've got someone who's running on average a 5-minute pace, starting behind someone who's running on average a 16-minute pace, that seems like, aside from a shock front developing and people's frustration, it seems like a safety problem.
Yeah. It absolutely is. And here's where I do get concerned about some of the seeding that goes on, because that shock front physics depends critically on not just the density of runners, but the relative speed and the relative number of slow runners. So you can seed enough slow runners into a fast group such that you're causing multiple slowdowns in the fast group, which then cause more multiple slowdowns, and you generate a problem. And there's places that does happen in a Disney race. For instance, you can watch runners join and leave pace groups. And when those poor pace groups get into a narrow section, it is a real mess for the pace groups and everyone around them. But you don't want to eliminate the pace groups either. Those are doing a positive benefit. You can say the same thing about how safe is it to put an athlete with disabilities who's going to be at a limiting pace near the front. Well, do we accommodate, extra because of their time? Yeah, we probably should. But if you do that too much, you also end up with an unsafe situation for that athlete or for others. And these are the questions that race directors have to wrestle with all the time. And I'm really glad I don't, but they're fascinating to think about and attempt to figure out ways around them, ways to solve them.
It takes a special kind of person to be a race director.
There are a number of people that I hold in the highest regard just constantly. And race directors are very, very high amongst them.
Yeah.
I see a bunch of problems. I'm like, boy, I'm glad that's not me.
Absolutely. All right, Brian. Well, we have been talking for quite a long time.
And I've enjoyed it.
We figured this would either go very short or very long. And I'm happy it's if we could continue talking like this all day. I feel like, what are the things that you hear and see that we haven't talked about?
Well, we may need to do another podcast, and I may need to focus on that better.
Perfectly
One of the
okay
things
with
that I
that.
want to mention about with course cutting is I'm very good with having fun with the data, but the data does not tell the whole story there. There are people that are cutting the course because they're despondent, they are hurt. I've seen people that they're hurt. They're doing nothing more than moving forward on the course so that they can sweep themselves out. And then they meet a friend on the course that convinces them, let's try a little harder. And they end up in the finish slots. I have seen, Run Disney people say, you should step forward here. I have seen people with medical issues attempt to move forward to solve those. I've actually had, when I say, report things that are suspicious, you'd be amazed at the number of comments I get from people privately that say things like, I stopped at that medical tent going into Animal Kingdom on the full. And when it came out, I was so discombobulated, I turned the wrong way. And when they realized it, they tried to go back and fix it. And you can't. I mean, the course officials will not let you do that. So the numbers are really important. And I have great fun coming up with code names and figuring out what's going on.
I've seen some of them.
But they don't tell the whole story. The number of stories that are out there on the course is larger than the number of runners because those stories are runner interactions.
Now,
So even for the people that I can identify that, yeah, you definitely shorted the course. I don't always know why, and that's important to remember.
Now, you mentioned course cutters and nicknames. You've identified a couple of repeat offenders, as I recall,
Yes, eggshells.
eggshells. How many repeat offenders are there?
Honest answer is I don't know because I haven't found them all.
How
I
many have
can
you
tell
found?
you I can tell you every race, every full, because I usually do the fulls in more detail than the others.
Hmm.
I usually find 5 or 6 runners at least that I have identified cut the course in another full or another race. So there's a significant percentage of the people that are cutting the course that are not doing it one time because they're having the worst day of their lives.
Hmm.
There are a significant percentage of those course cutters that really are doing it repeatedly because apparently running the full course is just not one of the things that they are concerned about.
But they want the bling.
Well, they want the bling, and the other interesting thing about that is everybody's like it's people in the back who don't care. I have found corral A and B runners that have very clearly cut the course. I've found fast runners who cut the course and scored a BQ time. And in at least one case, used that to try to get into Boston. It's not the slow back of the pack that is desperate in cutting the course. There's certainly some of that.
It absolutely does not surprise me that people at people seeking a BQ would cut the course to get a BQ, especially in a race like Disney that has very limited
Yeah.
mats to track.
And we've seen lots of people do lots of odd things to score a BQ. But the number of people that cut the course, it tends to be distributed through the pack. When I look at where these likely course cutters are, they're all through it.
Hmm.
It's not like, oh, this is a corral E problem or a corral G problem or a corral A problem. It's all corrals. It seems to be people, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
There are some
Yeah.
people that are simply, I don't feel like the distance.
Yeah. And these races, the layouts often are conducive to, there's places where if you could be tempted, it's easy to be tempted.
Sure, but look at Chicago.
Yeah.
There are courses that are even easier to cut than Disney.
And I'm positive if you looked at the data at Chicago, you would find it, except that they have all the mats to easily identify that it happened.
Yes, but there are still in the Chicago data, there are usually several hundred runners that cut the last out and back. They've gotten much better at DQing them ahead of time, so you don't see them in the data as often.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not a unique problem with Disney. It is a general problem with races, I think. So yeah, that's one of the things that I'd emphasize.
Yeah, that's one thing I appreciate with most of the triathlon courses. They are not shy with putting mats down. I've never seen so many mats in my life. Some of these, I was running, so that, like the ones that we're used to as runners, they usually have a repeater on, an antenna on either side and a wire across the road with a cover. Since in triathlon, you wear the transponder on your ankle instead of on a bib that could be randomly placed anywhere on your body. There aren't the antennas on the side. It's just a wire across the road with a piece of tape over it. And oftentimes that tape is in like a seam between concrete sections. I'm like, there's times where I've been in a race. I'm like, John, there were like no timing mats. He's like, what are you talking about? There's a timing mat every 10th of a mile.
Yeah, I've looked into timing systems casually,
Mhm.
not in
Yeah.
detail. And they are really incredible with what they can do and how well they can do it. When people say, oh, my bib failed or the mat failed, mat failures at Disney are around the 0.02%. So
Unless you're crossing on the wrong side of the antenna, the mat is not going to fail.
no, the mats very, very rarely fail. There have been some interesting things, like there were at least 2 Disney races where runners went backwards in time. They hit the 15K mat before they hit the 5K mat.
Well, that's fun.
Yeah, that's what happens if your course wraps back on itself too close and you
Yeah.
put bathrooms near one of the mats. So people crossed over to the bathroom, and evidently a very small percentage just got close enough to trigger the 15K mat. So you can have all sorts of bizarre things, but generally those are interesting and bizarre because the mat technology is really good.
I will say I've had one and exactly one race where I had a bib issue, and it was marathon weekend 2 years ago. My bib scanned at the start line, and it scanned, which we only know it scanned at the start time because my start time was listed as 0.01 instead of 0.
Instead of 0.
Yeah,
You should explain that to other people. If you get a start time of 0, it may just mean your bib did not read at the first mat.
right, right. And then it did not scan at the 5K. It did not scan at the 10K. It scanned at the 10 mile, but not the 20 mile. And most importantly, not the finish line.
Oh,
And, in that situation, you email Track Shack and you're like, hey, because I was not in the results. Like they had me as like a DNF or something. And I was like, hey, what happened? I finished the race. And they're like, prove it. So I sent them my Garmin data, screenshots of what was in Garmin, link to the Strava. And they're like, okay, well, we need to figure out what your finish time was. And I'm like, pretty easy. I started at time code 0.01. And that finish line picture that you guys sent me had a picture of the clock in it.
is the clock. Yeah.
So the picture of the clock is my time by less than a second. Well, they decided that my finish time was 5 minutes longer than what any of the data I sent them, including the picture of the clock.
Okay. I have no explanation for that.
Yeah. So unfortunately, it was a PR. It was a BQ race, and I couldn't use it as a BQ because I was just under. I was under by enough that I could have used it and gotten in, but not by enough that I had 5 minutes of extra laying around.
Oh,
I was like, come on, guys, can you please fix it? They're like, no, this is what we're going to run with. And what turns out what it was is, and this is a note, like I saw this happen at this rate. If you ever get a PhotoPass picture that says PhotoPass on it when it shouldn't, like you paid for it, it's because the timestamp on the camera is wrong. And it's set either before the start of the event or after the end of the event. And so it doesn't think that it's a legitimate timestamp. And what happened was, even though the clock in the picture was right, the time on the camera was wrong. And instead of going with the time shown in the picture of the finish line clock, they went with the time code on the camera. I was like, really? Come on.
Okay, so mats are amazing and high tech and almost never fail, except when you really, really need them to work sometimes.
Yeah. Well, we figured out. So what happened, I think, is I probably bent the B tag when I was like doing some stretching before the race, or when I was sitting on the ground for 2 hours.
Yeah, see, that's not a problem with dead last start. We just lay down on the pavement and go to sleep.
Or show up 3 minutes before.
Or show up 3 minutes before, yeah.
Yeah. You just walk right across the finish line from your start line from your car.
Yeah, I actually had at this last marathon, I had the weird experience of actually being the last starter. And by that, I mean, one of our rules is you don't try to start behind the balloon ladies.
Right.
That's a big no-no.
I've heard.
And we actually rule ourselves out from being kills. So nobody is trying to compete to be absolute dead last start. What I hadn't realized is when I dead last started the marathon, I was trying to talk to somebody on the sidelines, and I did not realize that everyone else had gone, including the balloon ladies. So I literally almost forgot to start.
You almost DNS'd yourself.
I suddenly realized that Heather and Kathleen and all the balloon ladies were up there getting their watches set because they synchronized watches. I'm like, okay, this is not a good scene. I think I need to move now, and took off across the finish line. But it was one of those things I'm like, oops.
Wow. Yeah. I could imagine how fast your heart rate went up right then.
I don't mind hanging in the back. I really didn't want it to not start. That seemed like a poor selection on my part.
Yeah. And you even showed up to not start.
Yeah, early. Yeah. It was a very early time to not start. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely DNS'd, but it's always been on purpose. Like you have those races that you pay for, and for whatever reason you don't start, like you're ill, you have a broken leg, the weather is worse than you're willing to run in.
In one way or another, it's an intentional DNS, not an
Yes.
unintentional.
Yes. So I successfully DNS'd both Halloween runs. I had bought bibs for last year and this year, and 25 and 24. And both years, because I ended up qualifying for world championships, it's like almost the same weekend. I'm like, is it a good idea to do both? I really want to do both. And this year, like the theming, I was like, oh, but no, it was a bad idea. So I didn't. All right, Brian, I am going to wrap it up now. I
Sounds good.
feel like there's so many opportunities to reconnect on these topics in the future. And I'm positive this is going to inspire lots of questions from a lot of people on a lot of different topics. But it was so nice having you join me and finally like meeting you. We've exchanged some notes over the years, but like meeting you in person has been fantastic. So thank you again for joining. And for our listeners, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found it useful or informative. If you liked this podcast, please like and subscribe and download this and all of the back episodes. All right. Thanks and see ya.
Thank you.